I'd like to invite Mike Davidson from Shirley, Papanui.
It's on catching people dumping here.
I have to say I like all the support.
Thank you, and look, I'll try and get us back on time, mate. I won't go through all our, obviously the long-term plan changes that are in our wall, because we obviously support them all, as you can see, and I'll go straight to the additional projects that we're looking at. Obviously, you know, additional projects obviously means additional costs, so that's always a hard thing to weigh up, and I guess when you're looking at the plan, you need to determine, I guess, what are the wants and needs and really the timing of some of these projects and what can be pushed out. And you know, just recently, I guess in the media they're talking about Victoria Street and what's happening there, and there's maybe an example of a really good project and what's going to be great for the city, but is the timing right for that when we've got other needs in the community that probably should be prioritised? So with some of the projects the Shirley Papanui Community Board is looking at, one of them is obviously with the Northern Arterial being built and the increase in vehicles coming our way into St Albans and the areas around it. There's going to be a huge influx of traffic and congestion, and so we need to start looking at how we can obviously reduce the impact. One of the first things we'd like to look at supporting would be traffic signals at the Springfield St Albans Road. I think this is actually a really busy intersection at the moment. It's a T intersection. It's completely congested at night time, and we actually need to look at doing that quite urgently. And then following that, not so urgently, but also at the Edgware Springfield Road. Also, just with the cycleway, that obviously with the Papanui parallel that is coming that way, with the increase in vehicles that are going to go down Cranford Street, we do have concerns about Courtney Street, which is a small collector road. That's obviously going to have a very large increase in traffic, we believe, and it's just not designed correctly for that. And we would urge that this would be supported with urgency to upgrade this street to make it actually work. We're currently working on the community facility in St Albans. Beside this, the sites that the community facility is going to be situated, there is actually a vacant section, which I believe came to the council on Thursday. We support purchasing this section with urgency. It's very important that we future-proof areas within the community that's obviously used for community projects, and this is a great chance. Like, we're going to have a very, very good community centre in St Albans, but you know, parking becomes an issue when you have a great centre that's obviously can take up to over 100 people, and currently in the plan there's only car parks for about 18 cars off street. There's a chance there to obviously look at purchasing this this site for looking at car parking, or even potentially some type of garden in there. Obviously at the moment with the transitional centre, they've actually got a very good edible garden, so you know, I think all communities like having edible gardens. It gets people involved and attracts people to these community centres. So if there's an option there to try and keep a section for both parking and edible gardens, I think we need to look at it seriously. Obviously one of the issues facing Christchurch through a lot of the wards is obviously the rivers and the condition of the rivers. The Styx obviously runs through Shirley Papanui ward, and there's some big issues with the Styx, and one of the biggest issues is obviously the amount of the weeds, and in this year they've seen a huge growth in the weeds, and we believe that having the one weed cutter is not enough for the rivers we have, and we would urge that a second weed cutter be bought. Intersection of Belfast and Marshland Road, we'd like this to be brought forward. It's actually a very dangerous intersection. Obviously Marshland Road is also increasing in volume with the more people moving out north, so we would like to see this moved into the next financial year. Installation of a disabled toilet at the corner of Horner Street and Papanui Road. This was on the plans a while back but got removed for obvious reasons with the earthquakes. We'd like this to be reinstated. There is no 24 access to a disabled toilet from Belfast to the CBD. So we think this is an important thing to be put back into the plan. And lastly, also the Cranford Basin. This is obviously an area of farmland that's not utilised. It's not a great looking area. There's a cycleway that goes right by it, and there's a group of residents obviously looking to turn this into a residential area, and I think it's really important that the board support in principle what the idea of obviously infilling this with residential homes, and we'd like council to seriously consider this and work with the residents regarding options for this land. Thank you.
Can I just start with that one, because you say in your submission that the council's charging residential rates, but they can't develop residentially at this moment.
This was information taken from the submission from the residents in this area, and so I know there's a lot of information in the background behind that, and I understand the reasons why they're also being charged residential rates because of the services they get. But I think when you look at this area, I think the important thing is when you look at this area and where it's situated, we need to look at some of the areas that just, what is the use of them? This is a perfect place where we should be infilling.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's nobody around the table that disagrees with that, but the urban limits of the urban development strategy and the RPS does not allow for it. So we have to get that changed first. So
those people will make submissions.
Yeah, they'll make submissions
this afternoon
themselves. But I mean, that's the reality of it. We can't do it while
and I understand, and I guess it's just making sure that councillors are aware that the community board supports this idea.
No, we're fully aware. Yep, absolutely. So Pauline, Ali, Phil, Yanni.
Oh, if I could just add something to Mike's fantastic presented submission. With the traffic signals in St Albans and Springfield and Edgware and Springfield, part of the rationale for that too is ensuring that the cycleway, the Papanui parallel, which is going to go north from Edgware Road up Trafalgar Street to Courtenay, is a shared space. And in order for that to be a shared space with cycles and cars, it has to be slow. And to be slow, we have to minimise the traffic volume. So we want to deter cars from going up there, which means we want the traffic to continue along Edgware Road and then turn right at Springfield. Now that's a very, very difficult right-hand turn when it's peak hour traffic. So if we had traffic lights there, it would really encourage the cars to actually take that route instead of cutting up Trafalgar. So to me it's a safety issue. And I really thought that we were going to be able to get that through for this financial year. If it's both of those intersections would be good. But for me, at least if we could get one of them. Now, the recommendation from the staff with the cycleway program is that we install the cycleway and trial it and watch it for 1 year. But I think instinctively the locals know that even now the lights are needed there. So I think that's a safety issue to protect the cycleway as well.
Just before you move on, because I know I'm interrupting you, there's also an issue with that Springfield Road into St Albans Street, and anyone who travels down there at that time, the 4:30, 5 o'clock time of night, basically there is a tailback, if you know the area, from the medical centre on the corner there of Springfield right down to Kinloch, which is just before the dairy where that intersection is. So this is all connected as well, so we can't just suck it and see. We've actually got to be proactive, otherwise it could turn to custard.
And the other mention of the weed cutter, that we are working with the residents out there with our working group, with the Sticks working group, but also the land drainage recovery program is focusing on that, the working party, and it may not be the best solution. There could also be a dredging option as well. So we are looking at that, and we're getting a report back on costings and availability of weed cutters. Apparently they're not so easy because you need a trained expertise to drive them. They're quite hard to come by, they're quite expensive, and they're quite expensive to move around, but we are looking at that anyway.
Yeah. Can I add to that? Obviously with the sticks, one of the biggest problems with the sticks is the amount of silt, and obviously dredging gets rid of the silt and the weeds at the same time, but obviously there's extra cost with dredging than there is weed cutting, but obviously it does a better job than just weed cutting.
But it actually did come up in the LTP, because I remember this, was it the Stewarts that came, that had the flooding problem?
Yes.
And it seemed to me that we didn't actually address that in the LTP. And the approach on this one is buying a weed cutter, but we don't currently own that sort of equipment. We contract out that work. So I'm glad to hear that you've called for a report on it. It seems to me to be the best way to go.
Yes.
But I would like to see it fixed this time, because you know, I felt that perhaps we had kind of not actually dealt with it last time, even though the individuals affected had actually come to make a purchase.
Because currently we have one weed cutter that actually does the circuit from Heathcote, Avon and Styx, and this year we had a big extra bloom in the weeds, in the Styx particularly, which was an unusual one because of the climate, and so they couldn't get the weed cutter out there quickly enough. It's out there now, by the way.
However, historically there were two, and so the reason we've got one is that one broke down, so there's work being done anyway. So.
Yes.
Anyway, the history will come out in the report, I'm sure. Ali?
It's been raised also around the community board table concern in parts of Richmond, Shirley and St Albans, primarily about the standard of the streets, and I know this is something that's been raised around the council table. It was most concerning because some streets that were identified by members that are covered in lichen, cracked and very, very poor condition and old deep dish are currently on the schedule to be repaired in 20 years' time. So there are a couple mentioned here, but the board members are getting some photographs of streets around where they live as well, and it is a real problem in St Albans because of the age of the streets and how long it is since they've been repaired or upgraded. So these ones mentioned here are just two really of many in St Albans that need attention before 20 years is, you know, sooner than 20 years.
Phil?
Thanks, Mike. Just brief on the weed cutter, one of the things the staff will tell us about the need for a second one, or is that in fact often, although there's quite high weed growth, when there's a flood, the weeds are the first thing to go out in the flood, and so some of it may not be necessary. However, that'll be all accounted for in the report, which we'll see. And overall, yes, like they seem to be moving them around. Doesn't seem to be that great an idea. Mike, I also just wanted to, on the cycleways, to thank you while you're here for the constructive approach you and your board have taken to the backing of some very challenging issues around and the implementation. And so I think your request for the traffic, extra traffic light at Courtney Street makes sense, and I had also understood that was in the funding, but clearly it wasn't, unfortunately. So,
Springfield.
Thank you for your active involvement in it.
Thank you.
Yanni?
Thank you. Just three questions, hopefully quite quick, but under the Cranford Basin, you say work is being done but funding required, but I wasn't sure what the funding you were seeking was.
So that information, that's taken from the submission from the residents.
Okay,
The residents are here, Yanni, they're coming to make a submission.
Right, okay, so we can get that clarified later. The toilets, the disabled toilets, which is a great idea, but have you thought about doing that in conjunction with the new bus interchange that we're doing in Northlands? Because it would seem logical, wouldn't it, to have the toilets with the bus interchange?
You know, that makes logical sense, and I guess it's making sure there's 24-hour access.
Right.
So yeah, at the stage there's no disabled toilet for 24-hour access from Belfast to CBD, so you are correct, if that can be done in conjunction with the bus exchange, that would be.
Yeah, but there are 24-hour. Sorry, not 24-hour. There are disabled toilet facilities available at Northlands Mall. Your point is that it's not after hours.
Yes.
If the bus interchange isn't 24 hours, then it won't fix the problem.
It needs to be 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then just the final question around the request to put the signals in, and you mentioned Trafalgar Street. Is Trafalgar Street going to have only like left out, left in, or is it closed off to traffic going north?
No, Trafalgar Street's going to be a slow street, so it'll be down to 30 k's. So the signals are at further along on St Albans, Springfield Road.
If you're driving along Edgware Road,
yep,
and you have the option of going up to Springfield Road and turning right,
No, you'll be
can
still
you
be able
turn
to,
right into
you can
Trafalgar
still go
Street?
into Trafalgar Street, but
So
it's
would-
going to be a slow street. So we're trying to obviously discourage cars from going down there because it'll be shared with cyclists.
Yeah, so that was my
Um,
question.
yeah.
So in terms of, rather than putting an expensive traffic light on the corner as an interim, have you thought about, would the board support closing off the right-hand turn into Trafalgar Street, which would seem a more cost-effective solution?
No, it
Still need
came through
Still
the
need
submission
lights.
process of the cycleway that the residents want that street kept open because we were originally looking at double cul-de-sac in it.
Right.
But that came through very
That
clear
won't
that they
ease the
weren't required,
congestion
so,
on Springfield, and if anything, it will worsen it.
Yeah, so the idea of the traffic signals is it will actually encourage people to go down to the end of the street because they'll be able to get across. At the moment, obviously, especially when you get the cycleway and the extra cars coming down there, it's just going to get very congested, so we need to make sure that they have an ability to get across without the risk of waiting there for a long period of time.
But you're recommending that the traffic signals go to Edgware Springfield, not
Yes.
not Trafalgar?
No.
Yeah, not Trafalgar, no,
But
no.
the concern was that
There will be lights
waiting
there.
for a year to wait and see what happens with the cycleway and all the traffic going through. So in the interim, before, if the signal comes in time, but in the interim, if actually doing something else like restricting the right-hand turn into Trafalgar Street.
No, we've had the
Could actually-
consultation
Said no to that
and the
overall, don't they?
feedback is
They didn't
no,
want-
they don't
sorry,
want that, and the businessmen were very,
Well,
very
that's fine.
proactive
Yeah.
about that. But the thing is, there's two reasons, as Mike said, there's the northern arterial implications
Yeah.
coming down Cranford and Sherborne, and then the safety for the cycleways, and so the increased traffic and the safety. So there's two very, and also the congestion at the moment warrants it anyway.
Yeah. As a resident that lives around there, the reason you'd go down Trafalgar Street is you can't get onto Springfield Road or you can't turn right at Springfield onto St Albans without waiting a long time. Putting traffic signals down there will actually allow you to do that and will stop encouraging you to go down Trafalgar Street, especially when it goes down to a 30k and you've got to actually sit behind a cyclist. So you just need those other mechanisms in place to be able to encourage the cars to go the way we want them to go.
Glenn?
Well, just one question.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you highlighted today, Mike, Springfield, St Albans, and in the past you've talked about with the Northern Arterial Cranford Innes. So do you feel, the pinch is more going to be Springfield, St Albans than...
Look, with the if the 4-lane of Cranford Street goes ahead, the increase in cars is going to have a huge impact in the whole of St Albans, and every street is going to have an increase. And we need to make sure that we have a holistic approach to all traffic downstream of Innes Road. Otherwise, there's going to be that much rat running. It's not going to be funny.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done.
Now we've got a morning tea break. We're due to start again at 11, but I just wonder if we should take a little bit extra, say maybe a quarter of an hour, start at 5 past.
Yep.
Is that all right? So
Sorry, quarter
we'll
of an
take quarter of an hour, so
Yep.
we'll start again at 5 past.
hour. Yep.
Somebody has to go and get me a decent cup